It's Friday, August 25th, 2017. Our panelists today, Stan McDonald, he is a political consultant, and Frank Ward, one of our legal experts. I'm Dale Jackson. You're watching Yellowhammer TV Live. Welcome to Yellowhammer TV Live. We've got a lot to discuss today. The Alabama Senate race on the Democratic side. That's right, the Democrats are involved in this too. And the Republican side. Americans apparently love free speech, and there was a state school board member that wants to institutionalize special needs kids. We'll talk about all of that, but let's get to the headlines. We've learned a couple of things over the last 24 hours in the United States Senate race. Let's get right to them. First, Luther Strange and his allies at the Senate Leadership Fund have released a poll that contradicts the two other polls we've seen this week. Those polls showed Luther Strange down about 50 to 32 with 17 to 18% undecided. A newer poll put out by Strange's allies show him down only 4. Now, we can talk about that, but we also need to talk about the fact that Sarah Palin's made an endorsement in this race. She is endorsing Roy Moore, and evidence has leaked. Evidence is maybe the wrong word. An email has linked where Mike Hubbard, the convicted former state legislator, has said, don't vote for Luther Strange. Now, let's start with the polls, guys. Frank, there are two polls that say 50-32. There's one that shows Strange closer. Obviously, his allies are playing up that one. 32% is where he was in the original primary. Now in this runoff, he's going to have to make up a bunch of ground. Do you see him doing it?
It's possible, but that's a lot of ground to make up. Again, possible, but his chances aren't looking good.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Stan, these latest numbers, you've been involved in polling and consulting. What does it say when two polls come up with two totally different things? You had the 50-32, then you had a 50-32, and now you've got one where there's a 4-point gap. What does that say?
You can make polls say what you want them to say. Now, Dale, you and I have seen a lot of elections where, people who are running way behind like to say, well, you can't trust the polls. Polls can be pretty dang accurate, but you can also do a poll where you ask questions a very certain way, almost like a push poll. Now, I looked at this poll, and it didn't give a whole lot of information on how they obtained this. And it is not unlike a DC PAC, especially one controlled by the Senate Leadership Fund, to maybe work with the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, they just wanted this number. And again, it's put out by the Senate Leadership Fund. This is the organization that put all the ads out slamming Bo Brooks and Roy Moore during the primary. They wanted a headline.
So in short, I don't believe this poll.
Okay, they wanted this headline.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
They needed it. They needed it badly.
Okay, let's talk about Sarah Palin here for a second. Sarah Palin, we all know, 2008 presidential vice president nominee. They got their clock cleaned by Barack Obama, her and John McCain. She has not been in the public eye for good stuff since then. I mean, there's been some, but it's mostly controversy. She has been relegated essentially to an online Facebook troll. I mean, that's what she does now. She trolls Facebook. Does her support mean anything at all?
Well, it keeps the discussion going. Yeah. She does have a following still, Dale. I think that it's better that you have it than you not have it.
Right. Yeah, you'd rather have the support than not have the support.
Right.
Roy Moore's supporters, Frank, that's will work on them.
Yes, I actually think Palin's, as much as I wish she had zero influence at all, I think in Alabama she does. She's from the same nutty mold as Trump, and the fact that Trump is so popular here, that means her endorsements.
There is another side to this too, and it is Mike Hubbard. Mike Hubbard has put out, not put out, it's been leaked, I guess would be a better way to say it. He put out an email in the primary arguing that people should vote against Luther Strange. He said, quote, it's really important for you to vote as it's likely to be a low turnout. There's only one race on the ballot today, but it's a critical one. Please take a few minutes to go out and cast your ballot. If you have any questions and you would like specifics or desire to know my thoughts on this race, just email me directly, text me, or give me a call on my cell. This thing went out to his friends. He said, the main thing is, however, for you to remember to go out and urge your family members, coworkers, and neighbors to vote. And he urges them to vote against Luther Strange. Now, if you're Roy Moore, you don't want to see this. I mean, you don't want to see, again, a reminder that Hubbard was convicted. Not that Strange, I don't think Strange had anything to do with this. He's taking credit for it. But if you're Moore, you don't want to see this stuff. If you're Strange, this goes to show you that your enemies are people you've put in prison. Stan, who wants to see this?
Well, since you put it like that, Dale, I agree with what you just said just then. But, on some things that you didn't ask or you're not saying, Mike Hubbard's a very intelligent guy, and he's certainly got all the freedoms and rights to do that. He sent it to his friends. It's not offensive to me at all. A person's going to have to, be wearing their feelings on their sleeves. But your question was, does it bother Roy Moore? It's a small blip on the radar screen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you are running for Senate, you've got a convicted former House Speaker coming out and hammering on your opponent. If I'm Strange, I'm thrilled about this.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Scooby-Doo villains. If it wasn't for these kids. It's kind of one of those things that it helps, but I agree with Stan. I think it's a small blip. There's a lot of ground for Strange.
All right, let's talk about the other side of this aisle, because believe it or not, there is a Democrat in this race. He won without a runoff. Doug Jones, he'll be facing off against Strange or Moore in December. He said something the other day which shows that this race may not be nationalized yet. We may get a national race and see some folks in here talking about this and money being spent on the Democratic side. Doug Jones came out and said that counties and cities should determine the fates of Confederate monuments. This is a break with the National Democratic Party at this point. The Democratic Party views this as a rallying point. They want these things to come down. Even some in the Alabama Democratic Party, I would argue the activist side, they want these things taken down, and they don't like the idea that the legislature said, whoa, we're going to pass a law that says only we get to decide. This committee we put together gets to decide. Doug Jones, is he playing to win in the general election because he's already passed this, so he'll come out, he'll be one of these moderate Democrats? Is that what he's trying to do?
I think so. If he wants to have any shot at winning, that's what he has to do, is he has to step towards the
Stan,
middle.
is there any chance here that this upsets the Democratic base? There seem to be a couple of issues right now, and there's always hot button issues of the day, and he's taking the position that is against the position of the mainstream Democratic Party. Not in Alabama, but nationally, and we know that what kind of media coverage are we seeing? We're not seeing local media coverage, we're seeing national media coverage.
I think the National Democratic Party leadership and just the National Democrat apparatus are aware of what Alabama is and willing to give him a lot of rope, a lot of leeway. When I first saw that article, Dale, I just thought to myself, this is a serious candidate. He's got some good consultants. Those guys are surely from Washington, D.C. and part of the D.C. establishment. So I think they're giving him a lot of latitude.
His quote is this, and I think this is interesting. It's not a state issue. It's your issue. No one should tell you how to answer to your constituents. It's a local issue, and the mayors and the city councils are on the front lines of this issue. And we've reached the tipping point, and it will be an economic issue. Now, that plays into the Democratic side of, if you don't do what we want, we're going to try to punish you. We'll punish the city of Birmingham. We'll punish the city of Huntsville. But it's interesting to hear him say local issue, because not many people view the Democrats as the party of small government. Let the locals decide. They want the federal government coming in with troops and saying, do this. So it's a weird thing for him to be saying, right?
It is. I think pragmatically, both sides scream local control when local control gets what they want.
Okay,
and
right.
yeah.
And if not, send in the troops.
Right.
Okay, all right. I guess that's a fair way to look at it. Another scandal in Alabama, and I will call this a scandal. An Alabama school board member said that we should consider institutionalizing special needs children. Now, there's a couple of angles to this. One, what an insane thing to say. Number two, her reasoning is borderline insane. Ella Bell is the state school board member. Her argument is that if we put special needs kids into institutions the scores elsewhere will raise, and therefore the state will look better. Stan, what the hell? I mean, where did this lady come from, and where in the world did this angle of let's remove kids who are doing poorly from the schools and the schools will be great? What is that? Defend it for some reason. I don't know why I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, it's hard to begin where to start on that, Dale. I don't want to just. It's easy just to throw things at her right now, but I think she has a little bit of a reputation for not always. Maybe she tries to think outside the box.
She's there.
This was a big failure in that respect. It's not unlike her. Normally, she's usually one of the ones that's sort of out there. And this one, she really stepped in it.
The thing that I find most interesting about this is if you look at some other countries around the world, the Chinese, for example, we talk about how well they do in testing and things like that. They actually do something similar to this. They remove children from their education system when it becomes apparent to them that they are not going to continue in a positive way, so it kind of manipulates the scores. America, we don't do that. In America, our school system is going to act as a place to educate, a place to keep safe, a place to babysit, for lack of a better terms, in some ways. But even if you have special needs, the public school system is going to take care of you for many, many years. This just seems so far out of line with average American thinking, isn't it?
I think so, and it sounds like a move just to game the testing regimen. And you have to remember what is the point of testing. Testing is actually just a way to poll and make sure that children are actually being educated the way they're supposed to be. That's what we should be focusing on.
She wants you to know, though,
is actual education.
She'd like you to know that she's not advocating for the institutionalizing of children with special needs, even though she said the exact opposite. I mean, it is. She says it's against the law for us to establish perhaps an academy. Is it against the law for us to establish perhaps an academy on special education or something on that order? And so that our scores that are not good will not be further cut down by special ed's test scores involved. Now, she's right about what happens here. I mean, my mother was a teacher. She'll tell you the same thing. We've probably mainstreamed too much in this country to the point where we put people into classrooms that probably shouldn't be in the classrooms. But the idea that you would remove them completely, institutionalize them, maybe put them in a special academy, which is the same thing, just seems completely against what we're never going to do this, right, Stan?
No, we're never going to do it. But I've got kind of mixed emotions about the thing, Dale, because what she has done, she has at least taken a step or two into some potentially common sense. Now the part that scares me about what she's doing is that to me she's looking at the entire public policy thing, maybe not one child at a time scenario, maybe looking more at just outcome instead of true results in children's lives. That bothers me. But she was thinking outside the box and maybe willing to say, hey, wait a minute, are we doing, but what she like you said, it is just not accepted method these days.
I would argue what she's trying to do is she has a car with a bad transmission, so she wants to paint it. I mean, that's essentially what this is. She's not worried about fixing the actual problem, raising the scores. Frank, she wants to game it. I mean, she wants to be able to say, look, we raised scores. I mean, yeah, we removed 10 to 15% of the kids from the school, but we gained the score.
Maybe. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. We all slip up and say things that sound different than what we actually mean from time to time.
I never have. Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to the last thing. This is a funny story for Friday, personally. I find this very amusing. I followed the Don Siegelman story for quite some time, mostly because the man is clearly guilty, and he has went through so many appeals processes on every level. He has appealed to the Obama DOJ, Obama personally. He has had many attorney generals arguing that he should have been pardoned, that he should have been released, that he never should have gone to jail. Yet he sat there in prison. And the reason I find this amusing is because if the Obama administration wanted to clear him, they could have. So the idea that it's just this partisan witch hunt where Karl Rove and George Bush and all these other individuals were after him is just amusing on its face. Now there's a new movie out. The movie is something about Atticus, Finding Atticus, and it's a reference to Kill a Mockingbird, which I find mostly amusing because in the second book, that guy is seen as almost a Klan member. So he wrapped himself in that cloak, and then it's like, oh wait, they changed the story. Wait, that doesn't make as much sense now. But anyway, He wants a pardon from Trump. Stan, he's a convicted Democrat, already served his term. Why are we talking about whether or not Trump will pardon him? Is it because of the Sheriff Joe thing? Like, hey, maybe everybody will get a pardon.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, he's occupied with the whole idea of a pardon, and I don't blame him for that. And who knows what contacts he feels like he might have in the Department of Justice. I mean, he's from Alabama, obviously, and we have Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. So who knows who went to law school with who? And there's probably just some kind of personal relationship he's hoping he can pull off.
Do you see ever Donald Trump pardoning Don Siegelman?
No, I don't. But I'm just telling you, if you're Don Siegelman, that is what you're going to think about.
You just hammer it home. You hammer it away. Frank, you're on the more Democratic side and a lawyer as well. Not that Stan is not. In the Democratic circles or the legal circles, is Don Siegelman seen as anything but a convicted felon?
There is an element on the left that sees him as a victim. I'm not part of that. I would tend to agree with the Obama administration, who looked at this and decided, no, we need to let this stand. But I think there's some truth in both perspectives. I mean, clearly there were political reasons for going after him. But just because you're being targeted for political reasons doesn't mean you didn't commit a crime.
Right. He convicted, multiple appeals, multiple administrations on both sides of the aisle, and the guy's still out there talking about his pardon. That's just something that I just still don't understand.
Dale, I see one of the bigger questions on this is why did Obama not pardon him, though? Because really something...
He's guilty.
Well, respectfully, both of you I think have alluded to, you don't think that the Obama administration, the hundreds of pardons they gave out, do you think they think that all those were merited pardons of people that weren't guilty?
It's a good point you make, because I can go back and I can pull up a bunch of different pardons of convicted drug traffickers who were found with guns, who pulled the trigger and they let out of jail. Yeah. That's a good question.
So I don't think our executive was necessarily taking it upon himself to decide guilty or innocent.
Okay.
He had other factors.
Maybe he just didn't want to pardon a corrupt politician.
I don't know.
Maybe that's a whole other issue. Pardon a drug dealer off the street. Okay, whatever. Pardon a corrupt politician who's been sentenced and had all these appeals. Maybe
it's a way to send a message to your own. We're not going to tolerate corruption.
Okay, maybe that's a good way to look at it. That's a real good way. I don't see Trump Sheriff Joe. I see him pardoning Sheriff Joe Apiro, but he is not pardoning Don Siegelman. When we come back, a little hope for you on your Friday. 85% of Americans believe that free speech is more important than not offending other people. Now, this probably surprises you based on what we've seen in the news the last couple of days. We'll talk about it next with our panel. You're watching Yellowhammer TV Live. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. We continue our conversation about free speech. And look, let's just be completely honest. Over the last couple of days, maybe weeks, the nation's been gripped by protests over free speech. Groups have held rallies that they've referred to as free speech. But the media has used the quotes around the word free speech a lot as well. For example, in Boston, there was a free speech rally that has basically been called a white supremacist meeting, when oddly enough one of the individuals speaking was the African-American challenger to Elizabeth Warren, but that hasn't got much attention. The way the media frames this thing is that free speech is sort of an afterthought. We don't want to offend people. We want to make sure we say the right words, because if we say the wrong thing, well, that's somehow a punishable crime, a thought crime, if you will. Americans, however, feel very different than the media is portraying the United States. 85% of Americans say that free speech is more important than hurting people's feelings. And now, again, we talked about polls earlier. You can make a poll, say whatever you want. This is a pretty strong statement, though. The new poll released by Rasmussen Reports on Wednesday revealed 85% of American adults believe that the right to free speech is, quote, more important than making sure no one is offended by what other people say. You guys are both lawyers. I'm sure you understand the First Amendment pretty well. The idea here is that we should be able to say whatever we want to say, as long as we are not inciting violence. And the idea is we can have offensive, hateful, evil thoughts, but no one's going to shut us down for such a thing. Right now we're seeing that people want those voices shut down. Maybe not by the government, but by mobs of people who essentially will violate the spirit of free speech. Are you surprised by these numbers? 85%.
Not really. And I find it disconcerting that there's 15% of people out there who think that free speech should be mitigated in some sense.
But you say that, but if you watch the media coverage of this, and I hate to beat up on the media, but it's so easy. If you watch the media coverage of this, you would think that most Americans are just absolutely appalled that in America you could stand there with a tiki torch, a citronella candle, screaming about white power and things like this, when in reality, those are the voices that need to be protected.
Well, free speech is the cases on it. It's always been determined by extreme examples of speech, and that's where the rubber hits the road. I think it's very easy to say in theory, oh yes, I support free speech. It's really hard when you have detestable people saying detestable things, and at that point you have to remind yourself about the principles and why we need free speech in order to restrain yourself. But I think most people.
Frank says the 15% and worry him. It's 85%. I saw this and I was like, wow, this is great. I mean, this is a good number to see. And they use the phrase bipartisan agreement. This is one of the rare issues where we can say there's bipartisan agreement. But if you would listen to Democratic politicians and pundits, you wouldn't see that bipartisan agreement.
Go ahead, Stan.
Go ahead, Frank.
Well, I was going to say, we also have to draw a distinction here between people suffering consequences in their private life as it comes to lost contracts, losing jobs, those sorts of things, versus government action against you by your speech.
Well, there's a spirit to it.
Oh, there certainly is. There certainly is a spirit to it, but there is a distinction there.
If you're going in a public square and you are screaming in people's faces and hitting them with rocks, you are violating their free speech. Maybe not legally because you're not the government, but the government.
Well, certainly that should not be tolerated.
Right, and the government should be protecting these people and their ability to do this. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is sort of allowing the mob to come in and say, we're going to be mad. Okay, fine, we'll cancel the event. Stan, 85%, what does this mean to you?
First, I couldn't agree with Frank more. I mean, maybe it's because we both have legal training, but so he hit some very important points there, and I don't know if I have time to reinforce. But with I agree with him. The 15%, I mean, the right to free speech and assembly and association and thinking, all these things wrapped up in the very First Amendment are utterly sacred. So the fact that 15% of the people would really be against the spirit of that is concerning to me.
Okay.
Now there was another number in there. 73% agreed with Voltaire's comments. It's a pretty famous comment that said, I disagree with what you're saying, but I would fight and defend your right to do so. That's pretty encouraging, but even then, 73%, that ought to be understood by 99%.
The best part is you lost 12% from the other part. Hey, I believe in free speech, but I'm not going to defend it. I'm not going to defend it. Let me ask this then. The government, a lot of people view the First Amendment as the government not coming after you, shutting you down, and punishing you. I view it differently. I think the government has a responsibility to protect it. They have to be active in protection of free speech, as opposed to just making sure you're not going to be punished for it. Is that their role?
I think to a certain extent, do they have to assign bodyguards to you and spend that? No,
Yes,
but in public, well, no, not to follow you around in your private life necessarily, but when you're in the public square, if you're being attacked for free speech, then certainly the police, and you know what, criminal laws cover that.
Unfortunately, what they did in places like Charlottesville, and this is why this young lady is dead, what they did in Charlottesville is they pulled out. And they said, you guys want to shut these guys down? You want to shut them up? Go ahead and do it. And they let them. And they let them come in there, and they let them fight. And that's not, that's where we've lost our way on this. I think it goes a step further. Real quick, Sam.
Liberals of all people should understand this, the importance of protecting free speech. And what Frank said that I want to amen so much is that the most important time to defend the constitutional right is when the facts are heinous and bad. That's the moment you got to step in and say, preserve the principle regardless of how it feels at the moment.
No, I completely agree with that. That I think is what this message says, and that's why I think it's a good thing. That's why I wanted to talk about it. Let's take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll close it out with the biggest story of the day. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. Let's get to today's biggest story. Stan, what's important to you today?
Drudge Report says today that it's been 142 months since a major hurricane has squarely hit the mainland, and they're expecting Hurricane Harvey to hit Texas, Louisiana this weekend at Category 2.
Okay, so it should be a big one. The media's always, I love this kind of week is my favorite. You turn on CNN and they're telling you it's raining in Texas. So, okay, great. Frank, what's the biggest story for you?
Google this week announced the latest version of Android, and it's going to be called Android Oreo. So I'm not sure who that helps more, Google or Oreo.
Oreo. All right. You're an Apple guy, though.
I like technology.
Okay, all right, so you're coming around on that. All right, the biggest story for me, the most important thing today, the Mayweather-McGregor fight. I'm very excited about this thing. I'm going to ask these guys who they think is going to win. I'll give you my opinion first. I think it's pretty clear the boxer's going to win a boxing match. Mayweather kills McGregor. Is that right, Frank?
Yeah, I think so.
Stan?
Yes, but once again, Mayweather wins at the box office.
Okay.
They both
always
win.
wins at the box office. You know, the funny thing is they said if McGregor wins this fight, it could bankrupt Vegas. It could absolutely bankrupt a lot of these things because the odds are so well. So some people come and put some money down, and it would have to pay, and not enough people are putting money down.
The important question is, would you step into the ring with Mayweather for the money that McGregor is going to make off this fight?
Yeah, beat my brains in for 10 seconds because I'm done. After that, I'm out. I'm done. How much damage can you do? We'll be back next Tuesday to find out. Stay tuned.